finalists to the Challenge B of the Free and Safe in Cyberspace 6th edition in Geneva. Challenge B, it's always been the challenge, the panel of this event and the challenge which is most unique, most difficult. Basically, we just rephrase it for the video recording that we're doing for our audience. It's basically we're already assuming that challenge A has been solved. And challenge A is how do we create IT which is radically more secure than it is today, and we create certifications that do that. Well, if we have solved challenge A, then can we and how can we make so that these super secure technologies are not abused by terrorists and not abused by politicians or criminals to do huge harm? And that's a major concern for many. Some actually dispute that this concern. Governments have so much power anyhow. And so we're trying to find an answer if this is doable. There's many that actually there's many that think that is not doable. So you're not. It's impossible to create means of lawful access mechanism. We use the term mechanism as not something that is laws, regulations, processes, technologies. There'd be a whole mix of these. So there are no mechanisms that would not create unacceptable risk for society, end users, or society at large. So it's going to be a very difficult thing. We're going to go in all kinds of directions, and so we want to also, bring in the audience as much as possible. So let's start from basically again. Let's have like each of you introduce yourself. Who you are and basically what you do that is related to this theme.
My name is Wouter Groen. I'm currently working in the World Health Organization in Human Resources, but I'm here participating in my private capacity. I have backgrounds in negotiations with industry and privacy stakeholders representing the government on the interception of telecommunications and the key escrow. I've also worked in the European Commission in Brussels in the field of data protection and counterterrorism. So I hope that I can provide some input to this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are you in a faculty of telling all the truth, or it seems that you have a deep experience?
Sorry?
No, I'm saying partly jokingly, given your deep experience within the government in these issues, if you can speak, tell everything you know about these issues.
I cannot tell everything because I'm bound by secrecy.
Okay.
But therefore I think this is a very challenging discussion, and I'm very glad that increasing IT security and awareness and certification can go together, or might go together with the issue of lawful access.
Thank you. Antoine Guerreschi?
So yeah, I'm Antoine Guerreschi. I'm leading the engineering of Symphony in Europe, which is a company that provides secure communications to banks, precisely with the idea of combining privacy of their communication and lawful enforcement, so lawful access. So I'll be precisely defending the fact that it's possible.
Caroline Porta?
Caroline, working in IT for 20 years, so I've been working on a lot of projects involving a lot of security, from private data to legal data, this kind of a lot of things. Let's see what I can bring into the field here. That's it.
Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Michel Jacquard. I'm a lawyer based in Switzerland, private practice. I did some coding back in the 1980s, so I like the idea that there should be a bridge or a way to discuss between lawyers and computer coders, I would say code coders. But I've been struggling also with a lot of clients to find ways to really respect privacy, ensure security, build trust, find ways to expand business, find alternative business models, trying to reconcile certain tensions. I've had the pleasure also to know you for many years now, and I think
we were young.
Yes, we were young, but I think that it is also interesting to see that even in a few years' time, the debate has evolved, and the kind of discussions we have now are not exactly the same as the one that we had 4 or 5 years ago. So happy to discuss with you how this could go, I would say, forever, but in what would be the trends in the future years.
Okay, great. So thanks for the introductions. Again, now that as we did in the previous panel, I just want to make sure that each of you tries to give an answer to this question. So basically, it's a question that is a yes or no, and you should answer why yes and why no. And so if yes, then describe how. How can we actually do that without creating an acceptable risk for society? And if it's no, again, explain. So try to be as comprehensive as possible on your answer. So who wants to start? Maybe, do you want to?
Yes. Well, when I saw this first question, I was a bit worried about the word voluntarily. Can providers offer compliance mechanisms to legitimate lawful access requests voluntarily, while overall reducing both resulting risks in privacy abuses and public safety? One of the principles of deception of telecommunications or hacking systems is that the government agency, law enforcement or national security, needs to have the cooperation of the entity which can provide the access. It means that that's, for instance, a national security agency not has its own person in the telecom provider to switch on and off whenever the agency wants system on and off to intercept. No, there's really the necessity to have the cooperation of the provider. And by introducing voluntarily, I would have the feeling that there is something in addition which a provider could give to satisfy needs of a security service or of law enforcement authority. And I would find that an infringement of the privacy, because I think that the main objective of telecom provider or any other company is to protect the privacy of its customers. So any infringement of that privacy should I think be based on law and on lawful request, and going beyond of what is being asked by the law enforcement agency or national security agency, I think would be a step too far.
Okay, very good. I think that's a no. I mean, it's been documented nicely. I think that's also qualifying the answer, the question. The term voluntarily, we mean it by offering challenge aid technologies is completely legal. So there's no limit on the level of security I can offer today with that device or a VPN solution. And that's kind of surprising because if I use a phone, there's legal intercept. If I have mail, there's legal intercept. Why, if I buy a phone, there's no mandate for that? Because it's so broken by design. And so no need for that. They found some other way. It's a murky way. And so that's what it is. And so in a way, that's a space. We are in a space where there is no official mandate. But then, if you try to create something that's secure, this flag will most likely come if they ever let you arrive there, right? They break the supply chain, break everything. They even have CIA has some venture capital called EQTEL. They invest billions of dollars by companies to break technology. And so when we say voluntarily, we're assuming that unless you voluntarily put this thing in place and make them confident that they can come to you and get if they have due process, they can get information, and that also that you keep that information safeguarded enough. We had this discussion with Antoine, because okay, you're keeping information for their access, but then what if they need that information and I lost it, somebody erased it? That can't happen. So they won't let you go even unless you have standards which are that extreme, even on that side. So that's what voluntarily means now in that in our challenge. So who wants to go next? On Caroline? Yeah.
Thank you. I'm not sure I will answer with a yes or no. I think I will answer with a we must, we will, we have to. No chances. If we don't find anything for that, then it means to just venture all of our telephone technology, whatever it is. So the world is it will get very insecure if we are not able to provide an access to our system to the state, to the legal entities. This being said, there are a lot of challenges that we need to face in order to achieve that. I've written down some of them. There may be many more than that. The first point coming to my mind is, okay, if we give access to a system, to whatever entity can be, how can we make sure that this entity is gathering only the information it needs to solve the case and no other information? That would be my first concern. Means if they need to have access to a system to make sure that taxes have been properly declared or whatever, how can we make sure that they are not looking for something else in that? That came to my mind because as a CISO, as a state, we have to open those mailbox to search for emails. And when you open the mailbox of an employee, wherever it is, you see a lot of information. And you start to figure out that nowadays, more and more information is stored in one place that gives pictures of people. It is huge, just huge. And how that comes to my second challenge, how to make sure that this information is properly taken, filtered and understood by the legal entity. How do we make sure that the meaning of information is the right one for the legal entity? If we only give access to code or binary information, how can we make sure that the meaning of the data is the right for the entity that is requesting for it? And my third and last, how can we make sure that this data is exhaustive? In some projects, we had to apply some law, and we have been requested to make sure that this and this and this information is available, stored, encrypted, whatever. But how can we make sure that critical number with validity date is good enough, or do we need to have additional information on top of that to make it usable, understandable, useful for somebody? Voilà.
Thank you, Caroline. No, I mean, breaking down the challenges, it's absolutely essential to try to find answers. So thanks for this exercise. Let me pass the word to Antoine. I think some of the challenges that Caroline also Verdun, I think, may also refer to you. Let me also introduce that Seevik not only is a very established company with a lot of success, but it's a leader in the level of security and privacy they provide in the financial world. It is not to advertise, but it's such a leader that they were so good at that the FBI had some problems because they couldn't couldn't investigate with enough ease when they had to go after financial crimes. And so they came to them with this issue and they found some kind of solution to try to find a win-win solution in this. And so much so that the solution they found was also praised as some way that in the future these issues can be more systematically solved. It was praised by the current director of FBI, Ray, last year. So Antoine is going to tell us more about this and how that approach works.
Yeah, I think one of the major flaws in trying to combine privacy with lawful access has been to rely on the technology providers. Now we hear a lot of things about moving towards end-to-end encryption. We hear, some of these big players out there that host user data talking about user privacy, and the paradox is they make money out of user data. So then there's a bit of a contradiction between guaranteeing privacy and making money out of user data. And therefore, they cannot really guarantee the privacy. So the way we solve the issue is, as a technology provider, we got ourselves out of the loop. And we don't have a business model that is based on making money out of user data. And the way we've done that is with end-to-end encryption and making sure that the ownership of the data, the content, goes to the customer. It doesn't mean the encrypted content can still host, but the keys and the encryption material is hosted by our banks. So today the banks own this encryption material, and they decide what to do with it. And of course, the banks for decades have gone under regulations where they need to be able to provide reports, they need to be able to open their books to the regulator. Instead of opening their books, they now need to be able to provide the encryption material, but we've moved from a physical world to a digital world, but we're staying under the same context. Now, if we take a step back a minute and look at the customer's perception. Let's imagine that for a moment that my mom wants to encrypt her drive, and maybe she has family pictures that she wants to make sure they keep private, and she has a Bitcoin wallet. Unfortunately, I'm not sure she does, but imagine she does. Well, the first thing she wants to do is keep that data private, but she also wants to keep it safe. And imagine she has an accident, the first thing she'd want to do is make sure that encryption key, is given to a trusted party, hopefully her children, and maybe she'll put it in the safe because she knows, the bank next door, she knows the people there, and she trusts them. So the first thing before, there's the privacy, there's lawful access, but there's also how do you make sure that my data stays safe, and that if some accident happens, I can reconstruct that data. So once you identify these trusted parties, your children, the next door bank, at some point, they may be trusted enough that the government actually also trusts them. And if you look at the banks, it may be their lawyer, you have a few law firms, it may be themselves, and you may have a number of trusted parties that are trusted enough that, the authorities may say, okay, if we can get the master key of all this data through at least two of these 3 or 4 entities, through which you've split your master key, then we can get access to this data. It gives them enough comfort that when the time is needed, they'll have lawful access to the content. And that's how we move today towards something which is in the internet era to a model that is basically what existed in the pre-internet era, where we give, the authorities have enough confidence that it can get access to the data, and the banks are those that actually own their security, and we're completely out of loop. If they have a problem with their key, we don't even produce the key actually. So the technology provider is taken out of the loop.
So thanks Antoine for this illustration, this situation, and also for bringing the discussion, including the trusted third party, and how crucial having a trusted third party in this picture of you have entities that want privacy, you have a government that need to have access for cyber investigation, which may have a due process, legitimate access, and so you need some kind of third party that can vouch for both of these rights. The escrow agent that are used in the third world where you don't trust anyone. But then again, since things are very delicate, because people's privacy can be hugely valuable if you are a politician and so on. Pursuing terrorism is also hugely valuable. So this trusted third party needs to be really trustworthy, and since it's dealing with technology, it needs to also really be extremely competent and to be extremely resilient to attacks and so on and so forth. So it's not just a matter of choosing the least worst, it's a matter of building it, designing it. And the design of this design a social organization which maximizes trustworthiness, accountability, technical proficiency is a political science exercise, and that's also a bit where we one of the slogans of the Trustless Computing Association is that we reconceptualize cybersecurity as the byproduct of organizational processes which are critically involved in the entire supply chain and life cycle. So it is really a byproduct of a governance problem. So in that sense, I think that's it's an interesting thing. I think we'll discuss even more tomorrow. But I think it sets the frame on how this is very important, and also has major legal aspects, multi-jurisdictional. I remember now, and Michel, which I now pass the words to, he participated to our first edition in Brussels, and so I remember he actually touched upon the jurisdictional issues of these things. You're free to take the spin you want on your answer, but...
I played the mercenary being a lawyer, so some provocative statements I'm going to say. So, I like the idea that we must find a solution. So the answer is not yes or no, we have no choice. We need to find a solution. And somehow I think it is much easier to try and find a solution right now than it was a few years before. Because a few years before, actually in 2015, you had people really fighting against the very idea that governments, that lawful access would be acceptable as such, as a principle. Now clearly, it's more about how do we do it, rather than is it acceptable or not. So there is a general perception that it's about the how rather than the if, which simplifies our discussions and allows many people and stakeholders to come in and contribute to the debate. However, second thing, it might be more difficult to find a solution right now than it was a few years before, because we have these, because of the lawyers, we have this GDPR and raised awareness about privacy. So now we have to deal with privacy, which was something that was not as such so important before. And people are much more aware of the need to have their personal data protected. But this is also interesting, is that privacy does not come into the way of finding a solution, because, and this is the first provocative statement I'm going to make, I think we really need to pause a little bit and ask actually whether everyone needs or wants such freedom and safety or level of security that we're proposing here. What strikes me is that we assume, somehow wrongly I think, that lots of people are unhappy with the level of vulnerability they have on their day-to-day devices. So we treat this debate as a one-size-fits-all. Everyone wants to have the highest level of privacy, the highest level of security. The way you look at how people use this technology, teenagers, older people, some just don't care. And I think we should be really careful not to try to impose standards of high security on people who are not going to apply it, understand it, pay for it. So we should maybe accept that for some application or some use of this technology, we might just continue living in an imperfect world and concentrate our efforts on only very specific critical issues. That's what we, so the answer cannot be yes or no. Okay, now how can we do it? Somehow, I think that also we have made a mistake of thinking that technology would bring the solution as such. So if we have a properly audited system with lots of PhDs vetting this system, open sourced, and there is no flaw, so as such the system works and it cannot be hacked. So this is technology providing security. But at each step, at least for now, there is a possibility of human behavior, intervention, imperfection. So technology cannot provide the answer. So then maybe we thought, let the parliaments, the legislation, the regulation, let the lawyers do the trick, and legal aspects will provide security. It's not working either. We have a wonderful GDPR in place, but we have a lot of violations and people not really understanding the impact of that. So if it's neither technology nor the law that by itself can bring this level of freedom and safety, then we need to go back to some more soft notions such as trust, such as human beings coming into the play. And then it's about the level of trust we put in humans, which might be an individual answer to that. Trusted third parties, but for me, I would not use law firms as trusted third parties. While maybe it might be considered as a consensus that law firms have a different way of perceiving risk and that they might be trusted for certain purposes. So, one, it's easier to have that kind of debate right now in 2019. And the answer is yes, we need to find a solution. Two, we need to integrate the privacy aspect into that, but frankly, we should really think twice about privacy and whether people really want in everyday life their privacy. And third, let's use trust in human beings and not the technology and the law.
Yes, let's open questions because we have a few privacy activists, not only experts, so I think we already have some questions.
It's a security problem. What is the problem we're solving?
Carmela, can you speak a little louder so we can listen?
I heard twice, we must solve this problem. What is the problem we have to solve?
How can we concurrently, solidly ensure legitimate, lawful access to prevent great crimes? That is the problem we are now trying to solve.
Challenge B.
Yeah, but is that a problem? Like nowadays, police have access to all of this, and you know they are kind of okay solving some of them, not all of them. Is really this something we must deal to solve a problem that is going to happen?
Yeah, I understood the question. Thank you. If I may,
Please.
because it is indeed related to my points. Yeah, we do, because first of all, it's good to have some people that are watching out for crimes or whatever, but also because we need to ensure that the information gathered by third party, whether for private reason or from law, is properly taken, handled and used. That is super important. Means, if today they are using some means we don't know about to recover data from our laptop, mobile phone or whatever, we also cannot make sure that the information they gather is reflecting what we are doing in our daily
And it's
lives.
questioning constitutional law. In Italy, in Germany, in Supreme Courts, they always
That
question
means-
that data.
That means I could send a message on Messenger or whatever that could be misinterpreted because not put in regards to other things that are part of my life already. And that can lead, has led, will lead to serious problems. So yes, we need to, in my opinion, and we really need to make sure that not only they have access, but they have proper access and the data is properly used.
Carmela, can you rephrase your question better?
My question is, we're talking here about the problem that currently we have, which is that police need access to some data. Now you have said they need to have access in the proper way. Like my question is whether they need to have access to this data and to what data in order to do any of the work that we're assuming. I'm going back to your assumption that it's actually needed because there is a problem. And so far, nobody has pinpointed the problem that we're trying to solve.
Well, there are two problems. So you want the problem of people not having privacy and the problem of law enforcement needing to pursue criminals.
Yeah, that's the one I'm challenging. That's number one. Number two
So
is if we solve
you're
this thing
saying
and
they
give
have
them
already all
access.
the power to do whatever they want, and so they have no need for further powers, right?
On the right now they have that, yes. And also, like I also challenge the assumption that giving access to the police to the infrastructure we create is actually going to help accessing to the criminals, because nowadays the criminals are much better than any other human at hiding. So it's not that giving access to the data that will become dark if we were to put end-to-end encryption is going to solve the problem. That's my point.
Oh, okay. Point well taken. Thank you for this contribution. Jorn.
Well, I'm kind of going the same direction. Law
Is it a question or a...
a question.
yeah.
A question. Law enforcement is telling us we need to have access because we want to go after those terrorists. But what they actually do is they do mass surveillance. And we have the illusion with our devices that we are secure, but in fact we are mass surveilled. So the question is, when we kind of go back to truth and say we will give legitimate access, but we will not allow mass surveillance, do we have any friends? Because the security agencies, they say we want mass access. We want to read everything, not just in individual cases. And people are used to the illusion that their devices are secure. So we might be in trouble because we might not have any friends with the idea of giving restricted, limited access to security agencies.
I think that this is at least what the laws, especially Swiss law, tries to address. Purpose limitation, limited use of the data you have access to, so you have some checks before you can access such information and what you can do with such information. Whether actually it is misused or not, it's a different story, but at least there is an attempt in the legal framework to limit to targeted surveillance.
There's an attempt, but regarding intelligence agencies, it's not limited.
Agreed.
And this is the direction we should aim at. To make sure that there are no right.
Okay, Wilfried, please.
Well, I think that it is a misunderstanding that security services want to have bulk data, they want to have mass access, because their only responsibility is to prevent national security threats. And for that purpose, they need specific powers, and these powers are the subject of checks before they apply the powers and afterwards. And it is the national legislator which has the power to build in safeguards in compliance with the European Convention on Human Rights, Article 8, paragraph 2, which provides that exceptions to privacy are justified in the interest to protect democratic society, in the interest of national security, public safety, and law enforcement. So it is us, the people, the voters, who through our parliaments can build in safeguards which must be met by security services.
Sure, but it is a should. Regarding when we have seen the last scandals, the reaction of the parliament to those scandals, seeing that there was an abuse of those powers, was to extend those powers so it's not an abuse anymore.
Well, I don't know which country you're referring to.
Germany.
Okay, Germany. But
in Switzerland, the powers have been extended as well.
well, just one final remark. In my country, my home country, which is the Netherlands, there are built-in safeguards to check after the application of special powers, where the applications of special powers were applied in a proportional way, the lawful way. So again, if in the case of Germany there was a scandal about abuse of powers, then you as a legislator should build in additional safeguards to prevent abuse and to monitor any abuse of powers.
Okay, great. Just one question for Stephen, just so and then Patrick. Stephen Mayer is also a journalist, so his questions are going to be watch out.
Not exactly a journalist, but I would like to bring the conversation a little step further. Once law enforcement has access to this data, do they have knowledge and equipment to process this data, and even more the judiciary power? Do they understand this data once they gather it? I just put a context in this question. We've participated in investigations where law enforcement and judges got data that was gathered through legal process, and then they did not understand what they had and misinterpreted the documents. So how can we be sure that once they have all this, they're not IT guys, how can they understand this correctly? The data they got by surveillance. It's the following question, and you see where I go.
Okay, I think it's a question in Caroline field, please.
Yeah, that was
Or
my...
I also on Michel.
Sure, please go ahead.
Yeah, that was one of my points, and I believe that is the most important of all today. It's my position. Because that is also the reason why they go for mass surveillance, in my opinion, because they pretend that they need to gather a lot of data in order to try to figure out the one and only one thing that is super important. How can we make it? Well, that is a super long project, I believe, but we should put people together on the table to create business objects that are clear to everyone and that everybody could use. What I mean by that is, a credit card number is super clear for everybody. What is a credit card number? 16 digits. Everybody can read it, you know, from the four first digit, which kind of credit card it is. From that, everybody can understand that this is a credit card number and how to use it. But if you look at tax figures, if you look at invoice number, amazing, in Europe, not one country has the same system for invoice numbers. So when you want to track how many countries have the same?
None.
Yeah, not all
It's called
countries.
fiscal optimization.
All is
by design.
Portugal.
When you want to track, sorry?
Portugal has a sort of a system which is kind of more structured, but anyway, it's not.
It's super difficult to match them. So it means it's also super difficult to figure out money laundering. It's super difficult to make sure that people are actually paying taxes when they are supposed to. So So we can challenge whether it's good to pay taxes, we can challenge whether it's good to not to forbid money laundering, we can challenge. But if we accept that we live in a society where we prevent money laundering, where we pay taxes to build a public institution or whatever, then we should put people around the table to come to an agreement. What is an invoice number? How do we recognize that the taxes have been paid, and so on and so forth. I believe that would be my
I relate to what you just said. We have had the same experience. So there is a lot of checks and careful carve-outs and a very specific procedure to gather this data. But then the way it is interpreted or transmitted internally in different services or to the judiciary system or to law firms, and then how it can be understood, this is a huge challenge. And I think that basically, my opinion is that in Switzerland we have come a long way, but there are still certain prosecutors who would apply to get some specific information without any competence to really deal with that afterwards. And then the information that is supposed to be protected is not protected anymore because it has basically been diluted or disseminated in places that are not secure. I fully agree with that. That's a problem.
One thing I would like to add now to the question is that the means by which this information is acquired can have a lot of problems. We touched upon this before. To stand in court once, if it's acquired, for example, through malware, under Italian laws, there's major challenges through the Supreme Court of Italy. The same in Germany, it's still being dragged along. There's been one in favor, one against. And so one of the reasons why the Ministry of Interior of Germany and France called upon a legislation for having some kind of lawful access for things is that we can get the data, we can get whatever we want, but then once we get it, we can't make it valid in court because by gaining this data through a malware, you can't only exclude that there are other malwares there that did these things, and so it's not beyond a reasonable doubt, under the US. And so for this reason, if in society you had radically more secure systems, which had a built-in way to allow lawful access, which was forensic friendly by design. So by design, it was provided in a way in which when you had to go to the device and make sure that whoever was there, that would even provide more tools for law enforcement to do their job. And so, the answer to you is that many of the Ministry of Interior and Justice, they've been complaining that they can get the data, but they can't then use it on a court of law reliably. So it is a major challenge. Yeah, thanks for asking.
Yeah, one of the items I'd like to jump back on what was said is, we need to distinguish several levels of privacy and probably several levels of lawful access. I think you don't want to protect your house in the same way that a bank is protected. And in the same way, we may want to have lawful access for a lot of, checking on regulations on a lot of aspects, which will deal with most of the issues. Like people can go in your home with a warrant, they can search your home. But it probably won't help bringing down an international terrorist organization. So then the issue of having to deal with focused crime, highly terrorist crime, with different types of access to the information, which would have its own challenges, but I think we need to distinguish maybe different levels of lawful access to come with viable solutions.
Yeah, well, that's a really interesting also differentiation, which I didn't make, is that when we talk about lawful access, you have matters of internal police, federal crime, and so on. All different things is international, and what is meant as national security, which by design, every nation defines what is national security, which may actually conflict with other national security, which goes under is still law enforcement, but it's a law that by design is beyond law, because Secret Service and Secret Service by definition are to some extent they go beyond law, surely beyond other nations' law, and oftentimes even their own. So that's an interesting differentiation. Even though the technological issues remain the same, but then you have jurisdictional issues in this regard. So maybe on this, Michel could shed some light, is that when we're talking about necessity of a state to inquire on terrorists. That's mostly always international. And so, okay, how is it done today? What is done today if I'm the state of the nation of US and there's a terrorist which is in Switzerland? I don't know the details of this because you don't get to know. Maybe Michel knows, but can tell us, or can tell us, and then he has to sue us.
Terrorist in Switzerland.
And no terrorists in Switzerland. So basically, the intelligence agency of one country gets in front of the intelligence agency of the other country, makes an argument that a certain person is a threat or something, and the national country makes this entry. The way this happens at the international level is that there are multilateral agreements, you're probably familiar with that, which in theory, there's a judge from one country, makes all requests, goes to the ministry, but that takes at least 9 to 12 months. And there is no way that can be acceptable when going after a terrorism. That's why many of these things go through intelligence one-to-one channel. And that adds a level of non-accountability, even for crimes where it's not warranted, right? And even for normal crimes, and so that creates a problem for law enforcement, also creates a problem for criminals going not done. So basically, this comes back to the whole idea of this event is to create international certification body, international agencies that would receive these requests. And so the evaluation, if that request is legitimate or not, would be done at an international level. So that's in Challenge B tomorrow. We'll be discussing how these kind of principles could be the basis of a sort of ICC, of International Criminal Court of sort, where there's a mix of international criminal judiciary organization that vets these requests against UN principles of human rights. So this, I think, there's extra benefits that you could have that. Of course, it doesn't seem like a simple thing, so I'd like maybe to Michel to bring more reality to this type of.
Well, so the different scenarios. If we are talking about national security, then yeah, you have certain access to international networks, and some of this is regulated already. Some of it just is on an informal basis. But that's limited to really core national security threats that might be defined more or less in several nations or jurisdictions. The same problem more often arises when we're talking about providing access to certain information that is stored abroad in private disputes about citizens. So it goes a little bit beyond that surveillance, basically. I want to get my hands on certain information because I think that, for example, those persons have tried to evade the tax authorities, or maybe those persons have hidden some funds, and I wanted to try and recover that. The argument that it would take months to go through the normal process because international assistance and request exists, so there are ways. And I've heard this argument from big companies and others saying, it will take months, so we're not going to go down that route. Is there a fast track in your jurisdiction where I could get my hands on this information? When the internet and the infrastructure was basically set in a design where you could say, this information is stored in that country, then that was easy because you knew where to knock and basically ask for a request. Now we're in a situation where you have clouds, multiple clouds, different clouds. So even the technology providers cannot tell you in real time where the information is, where it is spread. So you end up in a situation where the legal requirement is not so much about where the data is, and then you need to go through the process of asking the court of that jurisdiction if you can access this information or not. It is who controls this data, okay? Who has really the power remotely to edit, access, delete that data. And we have worked very hard with international organizations in Geneva. They have immunity. They do have immunity granted by Swiss law and international treaties. But they have backup servers in different jurisdictions. So, very concretely, you negotiated these kind of agreements a few years back by putting a sticker on the rack saying, don't touch, this is subject to immunity. Every information stored on those hard drives subject to immunity. So it's stickers with the name of the international organization. Now you can't do that anymore because you are not even certain that the data is there. So you have some kind of virtual stickers, metadata attached to the data. No one can access that data. Nobody cares where it actually is, but because that data is, as such, subject to immunity. It is not at all regulated properly, and you need to really cooperate with the Amazons of SAP and HPs of this world to explain to them in detail what that requires. Some of them accept to discuss with you, some just refer you to your terms, and conditions, to their terms and conditions.
Please.
To add on that, when you send an email from one country to another, it might go via a lot of countries you are not even aware of them, and each time it lands on a server somewhere, then it gets under authority of that specific country. So it makes it super complicated afterwards to know exactly how to retrieve the data.
Very interesting. Okay, so let's move to a more interactive phase with questions and shorter answers. I think Christian had a question. Christian, okay, let me introduce Christian. Is an intern, is a student of cybersecurity at University here in Geneva, and he's also an intern at a bank here, and so he's very enthusiastic, and so I think he has very tough questions for us. Christian.
Thank you very much. Not really tough questions, but I have a question for Caroline. And you talk concerning the way information is interpreted from one region to another, information or data, how is it interpreted? Do you think with the technology of today, with the machine learning and AI tools, do you think those type of tools can correlate all the information we gather and we can interpret it in the simple way in every place, everywhere in the world? Do you think is it possible? Because the solution you gave was to bring people around the table and talk about the issue of data, of interpretation of data. Today we have AI tools and machine learning. So
technically, so if I understood properly, sorry, it was a bit noisy when you asked
Yeah,
the question.
it's a bit louder.
If I rephrase, you were saying is there a way to make it, to simplify the data to make sure that interpretation of this data is one and only one, right?
yes.
Technically speaking, it would be a huge work, I believe, or at least in the company I've been working for. Others are easier than the ones I've been working for. Because the thing is, unfortunately, we have a lot of business rules that are involving a lot of data processing. If I may use your example of the tag that is stating this data is under that specific regulation, that is a very specific business scenario that is posted only there, and nobody else than this company is able to understand that specific tag. And this example, we have it everywhere, I believe. So technically speaking, it would be complicated. This being said, technically speaking, it is feasible. Then we come to the business logic that is coming on top of data, and that is a real challenge. That is a real challenge. And we only can make it if everybody is aware of the reason why we need to do it, why it is useful not only for all these security topics related, but for other reasons. Of course, I may list one day. Only if people are willing to participate.
And I have another question. At the moment, you said we have to trust on human beings, right? Don't you think that if we trust a lot on human beings, we are going to create a more dangerous world?
It's a very philosophical question rather than a legal question. Homo homini lupus. I think I'm not saying so much that we need to trust human beings. I'm just saying that we need to reintegrate into the equation trust in human beings. But the level of trust may differ from one country to another, one regime to another, of course. But we can't just get the human beings out of the equation. Law and technology will not answer as such to the question that is asked. We need to have a human judgment at some point. And how to increase the level of trust that we can have between human beings is precisely not to have only one, because clearly if you put a human being in power, then you might think that the person will at some point abuse power. So you have checks and balances with different people being involved. You might also increase trust or limit the risk of abuse by increasing transparency. So who is in charge of making that judgment call? Is it the information that can be forwarded to a judge, or is it the kind of information that needs to be redacted? But you can't, I think, prevent human intervention in this equation. And when I look around, I think that there's a kind of misconception that, blockchain related also, get the judges out, get the lawyers out, get imperfection of human beings out of the equation, because AI will do the trick. The code is the law. And I think we need not to forget that at some point human common sense might be useful in making those judgment calls.
Okay, before we move to the next question, I want to put as a clarification. We're talking about the importance of human and how much we trust the human. I would make a stark differentiation of how trustworthy humans are and how trustworthy a certain human organization can be. So one thing is a philosophical assessment of what is the average goodness or of a certain person and how much they can resist threat or economic incentives. And
the Chinese are measuring that right now about their citizens. They measure
yeah, but then who's measuring them? That's the question. But it's very interesting and possibly concerning. And so the two different things. So in IT, the human element. Often we talk about phishing, and that's really the individual, how much an individual is really susceptible, and not training, doesn't follow the rules, or could be fooled simply. Whole different things in the context of what we're talking about. When we say how we can we create ways to so the question is, can a provider of this super secure service go around and say, okay, you have someone you're investigating some of my clients, just come to me and prove that you have authority, and I will let you in. I will let you in, and I'll let you have that kind of information. See, this process involves technology, where I'm storing data, involves a process to filter these requests, and involves ultimately some third party that will define this process, define who lets us access. So how does this happen today at Apple? At Apple, the government goes there. I mean, under US law, there's a national security letter, there's gag order. They go there, but nevertheless, Apple can vet. You have some attorneys there that vet the request, and they decide and make a call depending on internal rules. They have a certain discretion within the law, and they do that. Is that trustworthy? I don't know. I mean, it's just trusted one big company whose goal is amoral by design. A corporation is not allowed to have any moral. If someone heading a corporation does something which is not the only the interest of the company, he's breaching, he will be fired. So he has to demonstrate what he's doing. And that speaks, I think, volumes for Zuckerberg saying, please regulate us. Because he can make a point to his shareholders that regulating is his best interest. We're at that point. And so I guess that this could be an interesting aspect. Also, if some of the questions also want to touch on this, is can we design this third-party organization to be so trustworthy and also competent, because they're designing technologies which are involved and processes. I don't know. This could include 5 randomly selected individuals, a jury of people, and I'm referring to some things that we're actually playing about. So anyway. Back to the public to know further questions. Please.
I just wanted to make a remark because there was the word artificial intelligence, and I think we have to be very careful when we mix judicial and law enforcement with artificial intelligence, because from what I saw, there's such a big bias in the input with artificial intelligence that the output can be very biased. And when we talk about police and law enforcement, which cannot have this bias, if we have it in the system, it's a big problem. To give examples, you have facial recognitions that an image is unblurred through artificial intelligence, well, it's going to employ it based on the inputs they had in the past, which is biased. Or you have in the US now, they have the police where they can predict when there's going to be a crime that's going to happen. Well, this artificial intelligence is basing his input from all the past crimes that have been arrested, and this is minorities and poor neighborhoods. So having artificial intelligence combined with law enforcement can be a big issue on the long term.
Okay, very interesting. Let me get another question, then we have a batch of answers. Let's also get 2 more questions. Yeah, please.
I would like to combine the first challenge and the second one into kind of a one thing. And my question is a little bit more to Antoine and then the rest of the group. Very quick one. You are kind of your platform, the one you're building, allows kind of a peer-to-peer communication in between different banks and institutions, right?
Right.
And you
within
believe that
within the employees of the banks.
within employees of the banks, okay. And you believe that it's a peer-to-peer communication. There shouldn't be a centralized sort of a database with all the information, or how is it working?
There is a centralized database of information that's truly encrypted. So
It's fully encrypted.
without encryption material, it's worthless.
Yeah. My sort of comment to question is kind of both to the previous panelists and you guys is, can we envision in future a form of IT systems where data belongs to their owners rather than centralized computers, in a way that very similar to the feminists saying my body, my rules, which means my data, my rules. Is there a way in say 10 or 20 years, and we can, as entities individually or as companies, own our data and then let only the apps out?
Yeah, well, that's precisely what we advocate, because the data is the encrypted data plus the key. That's what makes the data's value. And that only our end customers have access to that.
Well, the vector also is a value in the picture. So,
So
if you have
assuming,
encryption and that's not being encrypted right, not the encryption.
yeah,
The
assuming
vector,
we solve challenge A, and this is where, what makes it specific and why our solution works, it's for these customers, is these are not typical end users. These customers are customers that have a lot of means to actually try to pen test our solution, they have more security experts than we do. So they're a specific type of customers. So again, here we're assuming challenge A has been solved, and one of the things we mitigate the issues around challenge A is we have customers that are themselves very knowledgeable in security. Once that is said, the idea is, and when we were you were saying, how would we trust Apple in the way they'll divulge information? The problem is, none of the consumers have chosen Apple as their trusted partner. And again, to come back to your point is, at some point needs to be the people that own the data that need to say who they trust to be able to give it to some lawful law or some authority when it's needed. And today it's not the case. We're relying on the technology providers that nobody chose.
Yeah.
And they have a conflict of interest, because a lot of these technology providers will have a commercial interest, and they're not here to save your privacy. They're here to do business.
Yeah.
So that's one of the issues that we see.
Yes, Troy.
But in the particular case of Apple, their business interest is precisely saying, we value privacy. They make it a business. They try to congru their business interest and the privacy interest. So in that case, that argument doesn't work.
Yeah, they use it as a marketing argument.
Yeah, but,
But how is that really true?
Well, okay, well, you tell me, how is it true? I mean, I think they're not lying. I mean, if they were, everybody would be in their case saying they're lying, and they have lots to lose. So, let's tell me in what way would it not be true?
Well, let's, if you look at the San Bernardino case, obviously there are flaws that exist that are known. And in the end, they didn't need Apple to get access to the information.
But that's different from you're avoiding the argument. You're saying Apple, and now you're saying there was a flaw. Apple tries to correct the flaw when there's a flaw. So let's stick to the point. In which way any company, we know there's no perfect security, but every time there's a problem, they try to fix the problem. And if somebody else finds an exploit, they say, oh shit, there's an exploit, we try to fix the exploit. And the government is really on their case, trying not to reveal the exploit before Apple can plug the hole, right? So in this particular case, I mean, you know, you can of course say, oh, well, all the big companies are bad and so on and so forth. Facebook and Google, yes, but in this particular case, this is a model, it seems that Apple, unless you tell me otherwise, so be precise please, instead of just being, you know, hand-waving, in what way does Apple not fulfill their own plug about privacy? And if it's the case, this is technically a way that we can solve part of the problem.
So I'm not saying that Apple has obvious conflict of interest here. The point is, we as consumers, have we chosen Apple?
Of course, you can buy Apple another product. Of course, you chose
Okay,
a company.
if I may, yeah.
Apple, I don't know if you can go back in history, I have not seen Apple in 2005, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 when they launched these devices by design, value privacy. They have made an assessment at some point, PR assessment, that it might be better to present themselves as privacy advocates. And they were maybe better entitled to do so because their ecosystem, they control their ecosystem also. They are more credible in this statement than other companies. But my perception is that they have, by design, that anyone audit their system, precisely Apple is closed. So if they really are willing to increase the security and the privacy of their system, they should just open up the audit on their code that they are very keen in.
Well, I think they did it by their business model because they sell hardware. They don't sell software. That's why.
Okay, I'm going to go on record saying that there's almost proof that Apple is completely lying about this. And the fact is, in the San Bernardino case, for 2 months, the FBI was claiming that, asking Apple to open a certain device that they couldn't open and so on and so forth. After 2 months of being on the headlines and so on and so forth, it came out that a company from Israel said, hey, if you give us $1 million, we'll open it for you. Okay. Well, the U.S. government spends tens of billions of dollars in cracking and so on and so forth. You think that they needed that company, they couldn't do it themselves? It's really unlikely.
Why not?
Because if a government has 100 times more millions than another government, I'm not saying it's true, but it's a very great indication that they actually had the ability to do it. After that Israeli company, two researchers found another method without charge, and they did the same thing by doing it. So it is possible that just this company in Israel and these two researchers were more resourceful than tens of billions of dollars of NSA. But it's very unlikely. So I don't have proof, but it's beyond reasonable doubt, possibly, that are completely, the fact that they're actually lying about it. And also, let's get into dynamic. The dynamic is that the business of Apple is to convince people that their stuff is super private, they're way more private than anything else, but at the same time, they need to make sure that other national governments, they need to be able to investigate. Otherwise, their devices will be made illegal. Anybody remembers BlackBerry? BlackBerry in certain nations, it used to be in Saudi Arabia. At some point, Saudi Arabia said, okay, now from tomorrow it's going to be illegal. Then 3 weeks later, okay, now it's legal. What happened? It's your guess. And so of course they need to do it, and they must do it to stop crimes. But then Apple needs to face these problems, but they choose to solve it in a backdoor way, in a plausibly deniable way. That's adding vulnerabilities, which a certain number of nations add. They slip out, they give it to somebody else, and then we end up with a 40-year-old teenager with a few thousands of euros that can hack into your iPhone. Go ahead.
But I think it's complicated to know because nobody of us works at Apple to know exactly what was the intent. But one thing for sure that happened with the San Bernardino case is that the phone had a backup in the cloud, and the law enforcement, when they got the phone, they tried to break in the cloud backup and they erased it. And I think it stresses out the point I made before, that law enforcement doesn't know how to use this technology, and this is the main problem. And Apple, they have a very sweet deal with governments. The back door is that you have a phone, you want to get in, maybe he made a backup in the cloud and then you have full access, point A. Point B, keep it a few months, there's going to be a vulnerability, we're going to tell you what it is once it's patched, and then you can exploit through this vulnerability. And this is the deal. So you just have to wait because we are going to patch it, and when we patch it, we tell you how to get in.
Exactly. And just one further explanation, why did FBI get in this theater, security theater, 2 months going there? This is crucial on their mission. If they want to operate and be able to investigate and surveil criminals, they need for criminals to overestimate the kind of technology. And that's why you read in the media, we are selling secure communication and so on, and 95-96% of people, even if they're wealthy and so on, says, oh, why should I get a device? Why can't I just get an app? FBI can't even crack on an iPhone. And so this information enables them to surveil mid-level criminals, because the top head of mafia Obama will not believe this crap. But by being able to surveil mid-level criminals, you catch the big-level ones. And so this explains kind of like maybe some deception there is out there. So now I'm on record accuse Apple of, I don't know, you're an attorney. Is this going to be prosecuted for?
Actually, no, I think you will be deprived from further
purchases. So I need to take possession of the video memory.
And beyond here, because we're talking about Challenge B and lawful access, etc. Where most of the consumers are choosing Apple because they like the iPhone, not because of the relationship that Apple has with such and such government. So it puts also an asymmetry as consumers as to what lawful access enforcement is done in various areas of the world for various companies. So it should be Apple's mission to do the best phone ever and provide solutions for Challenge A, not necessarily solutions for Challenge B. That's at least my opinion.
A quick answer, they are making the best phone ever. So their objective is not to create something that is radically secure or meaningfully secure. It's just that they're substantially better than competition. And that's enough to become the enterprise grade. And since the standards are so low, by controlling the supply chain, even though CSOs, CEOs know that this stuff is not secure, it's still the least worst you can buy. And so I will mandate this to be for all my executives. Troy.
Yeah, I just want to correct the point you made, because part of what they have to do is to ensure legitimate legal access. So it's not true that they don't have to meet Challenge B. They have to meet Challenge B. They operate their company operating in society, their laws, they have to follow the laws. So by definition, they must meet Challenge B. You can't say that they only have to meet Challenge A, not Challenge B.
Well,
otherwise, you're saying that Apple can get away with being a company which does illegal stuff, which by definition doesn't work. By definition, we say legitimate lawful access. Okay, so by definition, every company in the world has to allow it. This was the definition. Otherwise, you're just being, if I created a mafia phone and sold it secretly, and yes, maybe but that's not the case. So every company in the world has to, in fact, ensure Challenge B is met. Otherwise, it'll be out of business tomorrow.
No. It's not. It's the contrary. Basically, in nearly all jurisdictions, it's completely legal. There's no limit on the level of security that you're providing on a certain device. And there's no limit on the level of security that you're providing on a VPN box. And we talked about that before, and it's extremely surprising. Why is that? Because everything is completely broken. You don't need that. And they wanted to do the Clipper chip back in the 90s. I know most of you know about the idea of Clipper chip. For those that don't, back in the 90s, the US government proposed to have a mandate that every computing device would have a special chip that, under certain conditions, remotely would be activated to do a search and seizure, intercept, and so on and so forth. And that didn't work. It was hacked, and the whole idea was completely trashed by the community, and any idea of lawful access was trashed with that. And so since then, governments basically found another solution. So they found ways around it. They made sure that everything was broken. They always have a way in. And that's the way the world we're living in. Everything is broken. Everybody can get in, but then you cannot make it stand in a court of law. So, okay, so they tell me we're going a bit too far. So, thanks a lot for your panelists for this great panel. Thank you. after this panel, we usually have a long break. After doing this 6 times, I learned that after challenge B, we need a long break because it's head splitting. So we'll see you back in 20 minutes. Roba figa, cazzo è bello a farla a Roma. Sono 4 anni che cerco di farlo.